Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farah.
Welcome to the March live edition of the Industry Angel. So today we have the MD of ievo, who are a manufacturer of biometric security systems. Now, our guest today has had tonsillitis. Okay, so we'll have to cut him a bit slack. So welcome to the show, Shaun Oakes. You notice Shaun didn't say hi there. Thank you very much. He's keeping everything on a minimal, so that this might be like drawn teeth, mightn't it? So,
thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us, Shaun.
You're welcome.
And well done. I know you've been struggling this week. So, biometric security systems. We know all about that stuff here. Where did it start? How did this all come about? Because it's not something you just randomly think about. Were you in that industry beforehand, or?
No, absolutely not. As in food retail, actually. Okay. Management in food retail for pretty much most of my career since I left college, where I did do, at the time, a diploma in electronics and digital electronics, which was in the Southwest. However, unfortunately, at that time, two of the biggest employers within that region had actually laid off about 2,000 people. So it became apparent very quickly that the industry that I was looking to go into, there weren't really many job prospects at that time. But I've been working since the age of, well, my mum would say different, probably about the age of 13 when I stole my dad's lawnmower and set off one morning to try and earn some money mowing lawns locally. But I got a job as a Saturday student in a small ironmongery place in the main city near where we lived, and then put my CV in, which was extremely limited at that time, but put my CV into Sainsbury's and eventually got offered a job there, and that was the start of that career, I guess, and worked my way up from Saturday student all the way up to higher management.
Within Sainsbury's, so when you mentioned food retail, that was where you were at? Yeah,
I mean, I was very fortunate at the time. They were looking predominantly, Sainsbury's, one of the biggest employers, most renowned food supermarkets, along with M&S. I mean, if you got a management position in one of those retail companies at the time, you were, well, what used to be back in the day, set for life, as they used to say. So they were predominantly looking for postgraduates. And then I think they realised that they were missing out on some opportunities of, different views and thoughts, if you like, within their management structure and how they wanted to take the business forward. So I was nominated at store level to go on to a management training program, which was really quite intense over 2 to 3 years. But looking back now, it was absolutely amazing. The amount of stuff that you had to learn, you had to learn everything that a store manager would know, even though you were starting at the lower end of the management chain, if you like. I still recommend retail management today to anybody at a younger age to go out and get a Saturday job.
Was this in your 20s when you were doing this management? Or?
No, it was straight at 18.
Was it really?
Yeah. So I literally went in as I was working on the meat department, I think. And on the checkouts, so with all my friends and peers, and then the next day I turned up in a disgusting brown suit, but it was a suit. So that raised quite a few eyebrows, and then chucked in at the deep end. You had to literally go up to people who were your peers in the position you were formally in, and then have to go up and start to manage these people and send requests out on what you wanted them to do. So it was tough, extremely tough. So did
you ultimately end up in managing the store?
Yeah, I moved from Sainsbury's to then I went to CWS, which was quite a big progression in the career path that I was in. And I ended up doing area management, and I was put on managing a number of stores as well, which were underperforming, and turned those stores around. And then I ended up working for Safeway before it became Morrison's, as was. But there were certain reasons I ended up in that move that weren't necessarily a career progression, just a bit of a life change. And as great as food retail is, it's you can get burnt out pretty quickly. It's
I was going to ask you, is it the Northeast, because I'm detecting a non-Northeast accent there,
why
Shaun.
I man, I don't know what you mean. You don't know. No, so I was born in Plymouth, lived in Cornwall, lived in Swindon for some of my childhood. So it really depends how many beers I've had to what twang of accent you're gonna receive.
Yeah.
And this is water on the table, by the way.
So obviously you studied like electrical engineering, was it? Did you say?
Well, I mean, it was electronics and digital electronics.
Okay.
But bearing in mind, that was at least 10 years ago when I was 18. Who's laughed? Compared to now, not even worth what it was written on a postage stamp, really. But
so because you studied that in the retail, were you the go-to guy for systems?
No, not really. I think I don't know really. I think it was at that age you're young, you're immature. I look back now over some of the decisions I made and some of the actions I did within that opportunity that I had in life, and I've certainly learned from them. I don't have regrets as such, but I think as you get older and more mature, I'd like to think anyway, it gives you time to look back and reflect, because you can use those lessons that you've learned earlier on in life to ensure that you don't make the same mistakes later on in life. And I have no regrets with food retail, absolutely none at all. It's helped me and my own business tremendously over the years. But yeah, it added good points and bad points.
It's interesting. You kind of reminded me about my youth as well. So I kind of did an apprenticeship in a large blue chip company, and I hated every minute of it. Especially through my 20s, it was lots of process, lots of management pushing you to do different things that you didn't want to do, and non-agile like we are now in SME. But looking back, I wouldn't have changed it because it's taught me so much. So when you do get into that SME space, you think, wow, I actually know so much.
Yeah.
So you feel that's invaluable?
One of the things that I did learn in food retail is being a younger manager, you were seen as the future of the business. Back in the day, as I said, Sainsbury's was number one, and they lost out pretty rapidly to Tesco's. This is in the war, if you like, of the industry. And one of the most frustrating parts within that particular company was, as younger managers, you were taken away for periods of time or training courses, and they or head office understood you as the future of the business. You were the people who were going to move the business forward.
No pressure.
Well, no. The only pressure came is when you went back to store, because the store management at that time, which is what I believe to be a lot of the problem, was very old school. It was very, it was more like a dictatorship working in there, and unrealistic targets were set, and this is how they were brought up to manage anyway. And one of the biggest battles you would face is you would be leaving one of these courses, enthused and refreshed, and you'd want to go back in and implement what you've learned into the store. And then within a matter of a couple of hours, that door's being shut on you, and it's back to the old school ways, and off you go. And I think that's one of the most frustrating parts that I took from it. That being said, it's also something that I learned from that is to ensure that you don't become one of those managers yourself in whatever career you go into. So I make sure that I try my hardest to ensure that I don't become any part of the frustrations that I had with peers in my past.
So great background, and obviously you've learned a lot from that retail side. So we're talking supermarkets a lot here and retail. Let's get into the bio stuff. How did this happen? I'm intrigued.
I'll be completely honest. So I had a very, very good friend of mine. We had started our career at Sainsbury's together, been best of friends ever since. And He'd moved up to the Northeast, was doing extremely well for himself, what I would class as very entrepreneurial. We stayed in very close contact, both my family and his family. And then he knew I'd had enough of food retail. There'd been a few life changes that had happened along the way. So, yeah, I was looking for an out, but, you know, where do you go? What do you do? Especially where I was currently living at the time and with family commitments as well. And then he phoned me up one day and he said, we're both film fanatics, absolutely love our films. And he said, oh, you know, Back to the Future 2. I was like, yeah.
You're showing your age.
Of course I know. I see it on a rerun.
3, Back to the Future 3.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, yeah, you know, Back to the Future 2. And I was like, yeah. He said, you know where she the mum or daughter scans her finger to get in the door?
Right,
he went,
okay.
yeah. He goes, I've got one. I was like, never. He said, yeah, I've got one. You know, I'm sure we're going to make millions out of this idea, and off we go. He said, so I want you to come up and run this side of the business for me. And it was probably the timing was the right time for me to make such a rash decision, I guess, because it meant moving up here, which wasn't a problem. I'd been up visiting loads of times and loved the Northeast, but the son was only 1 at the time, so we just had another child. So it meant commuting pretty much every weekend from Bristol Airport up to Newcastle and being here in the week. So came up and, unfortunately realised in a very short period of time that the product we had, or as great as it was, certainly wasn't going to make us millions.
So were you buying these in and then reselling them on?
It was a fingerprint door lock, all built into one that he had sourced from China at the time. It was a good quality product.
And you were installing them?
No.
Is that what you guys are doing?
No,
you just
they
distribute
came out
them?
boxed out.
Yeah.
Distribute's a big word. I think it was more of so if you imagine that, you know, all I was used to was intranet systems. So any computerized system was all through retail. It was all closed down. You didn't use Microsoft. You didn't use anything at all. You just used Sainsbury's or CWS's systems, which are all pretty much the same. And then I had to come up and realize that I didn't even know how to send an email on Outlook. I didn't know how to. It'd probably been 20 years since I used Word.
Days before eBay?
Huh?
No eBay? Days before then, was it?
No, there was eBay because that's how I bought my first mobile phone. So there was definitely eBay. Yeah,
Massive.
and sold my first mobile phone for £10,000, which I was over the moon about, and then realised I got £120 charge and the £10,000 didn't arrive. But that's a whole new other story.
Okay.
So, but I guess I got the biometric bug. That's what had happened. I was absolutely fascinated by the technology. I couldn't believe, this unit, you could hold 100 unique fingerprints. And I just couldn't get my head around how 100 people could register their finger and go up to this fingerprint door lock and get in. The simplicity of it was fantastic. But the product itself, had a few issues in its own design. So leading on from that, because I'd made such a commitment to come up, I wanted to prove to myself more than anything. I had to learn everything from scratch. Even down, like I said, to computer systems. We didn't have money. We didn't have budgets for marketing.
Just the two of you?
It was just me.
All right. Okay.
He was off. He obviously was involved.
Okay.
As the owner of the business, but no, when it came to the day-to-day running, it was pretty much myself. I did turn up. We did have a product. We did have a supplier. We did have a website, as limited as that was in its time. It was one product. So yeah, I got the biometric bug, and realised that there was value in biometrics in whatever format you were looking for. It offered a lot of outcomes and benefits comparative to existing access control systems on the market. So anything that's card, PIN, proc, swipe, all of these systems that are out there, which people are paying a lot of money for, are not really secure. I can give you my card and you can get in as me. I can share the PIN number. So you're paying all this money for this system, but it's not really a security system. Whereas the biometrics, I can't just give you my finger and off you go. It's pretty secure. You've got to be there to open that door. So there's complete traceability of that particular system. So I started researching biometrics globally and became fascinated with a lot of the product offerings that were out there, and more importantly, the claims that were being made to these product offerings. And I eventually taught the owner around to enabling me to visit certain suppliers, which were predominantly in the Far East. So I went to Hong Kong, went to China, and went to South Korea. There was one company in America. Glad I didn't go to them because they sold out. And then there's the biggest manufacturer really is in France. But most suppliers at the time were the Far East. So I talked him out into spending some of his hard-earned cash and send me over to the Far East to investigate all of these companies and their product portfolios, which was extremely interesting. First time I'd ever suffered jet lag, which was not interesting. Somebody thought it was a good idea that because it was such a long flight that I didn't sleep the night before, because I would sleep on the plane, which I didn't sleep on the plane, and then arrived in South Korea thinking it was going to be warm. I don't know why. I just, my head said long distance travel, you're going somewhere that's going to be hot. So packed for the summer. And then I remember JQ, his name was, who met me at the airport, and I'm coming through in my trolley, and he said, "Oh, where's your coat?" And I'm looking at him like, "Howie, man, I live in the Northeast. You haven't got a clue. It's going to be like a sauna over here." And then the airport doors opened, and wow, I've never felt cold like that in my life. So I'd been up like 48 hours. And then everywhere I went, people were pointing, because I wasn't at the tourist areas. I was at the business end. So I don't think they'd ever seen anybody over 5.5 foot. And it becomes, so 48 hours no sleep, you're freezing cold. You've spent all this money to get over there, and then your head's going like, okay, this is a bit weird, and why are people pointing and staring? And then we went to get something to eat, and there was no, like English translation on stuff, and I got a severe nut allergy, so then panic kicked in, and then the jet lag hit. But anyway, sorry, I guess it's just one of those funny stories. I got loads actually. But you're more interested in the business, obviously. So, I eventually sourced a number of companies and managed to talk one company in particular, who I really did like their product range, into an exclusivity deal, which was something I'd never done before. And
exclusive, as in European distribution?
To become the sole distributor of their complete portfolio. Yeah. And I think the contract at the time was worth like £1 million, which obviously I talked them down considerably to get this deal over the table, and demonstrated to them how we were going to go out and promote the product. And I think the fact that we already had some substance behind us as a biometric supplier, I mean, they didn't know the numbers of what we were or were not doing at the time, but secured this deal, which was fantastic. And then all of this kit arrived, which I thought was great, and it looked really futuristic and brilliant. And then it was a sudden realization of, okay, now I've got to sell it.
So you hadn't sold it before you got it? You waited till you actually got it physically?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. In hindsight, that's maybe not such a... I mean, I told them, given them correct data on how many security installers there were in the UK, and we were very much focused on the UK at the time, but there were also conversations of then taking over Europe, and I'm sure they were getting very excited about, but I was still processing how am I going to do this in the UK, let alone anywhere else.
Was this a bit fake it before you make it style, or were you all right with this?
No, it was all, as I said, it was factual data that I gave them, as in regards to how many installers there were. It's, whether or not they misinterpreted our direct link with those installers at the time was extremely interesting. Yeah, so
Do you still work with these guys now, or?
Oh no,
Oh,
no,
right, okay,
no,
that's
no,
fine.
no. This was another company I worked for. This is how I got into doing what I'm doing now. So I mean, very long story short. Then I ended up having to go out and sell the technology. I probably sold the first biometric construction site in the UK, which was actually in Middlesbrough at the time. That was for what was the new police station. So you're talking now, 12 years ago.
So this is more. Before you go on site, you scan your finger, you've got authorization.
Put it onto a turnstile. And the turnstile we received from another company. And I'll never forget it. I was suited and booted. It was snowing outside. I turned up with all our kit. The turnstile arrived. The guy with the turnstile, the engineer, was there. And I said, right, mate. I said, here's all the stuff you need to put on it. And he went, no, I'm not touching that. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not touching that? I said, part of the deal is no. He said, I'm here to install what you've bought off of us. I'm not here to install your kit. Well, that was, what should have probably taken 3 to 4 hours to install. 4 days later, we were still there. Luckily, a lad that was working with me as well at the time, trying to install all of this kit, dealing with mains that were at 12,000 volts or something, and not having really a clue what we were doing. And then I think the most, important part to that was understanding how a South Korean company translates their manuals, and then finding out on day 4, when you've literally got nothing left in your soul to give, that they'd done all the wiring diagrams the wrong way round, and some of the wording was not translated correctly, and so huge lessons learned. But again, not any lessons learned that I don't regret, because manuals then became extremely important moving forward, and understanding them, especially if we were going to look to resell the kit. And then I sold the first nursery system in the UK, which we ended up winning an award for as well. Not just that one, but the amount of systems we put out. But it wasn't so much about going out and selling the biometrics itself. That was a secondary product. What it was, going out and selling the unique outcomes and benefits that biometrics offers to the end user. Yeah. And we dealt then and sold directly to end user. And that company grew. But the other huge problem that we had at the time was, as soon as you come up or you go into a meeting with somebody and you're promoting biometrics and what it does, and it was still relatively new as well within the industry, people then start reinventing it for you and telling you what else you can go and do with it. And as I said, the business had grown, and there were more owners at that time, and they ended up going in different directions on different routes to market for biometrics. And it got to the point then when I had two options really. Either I was going to leave that company and go back home after a good few years of hard work for very little reward, or I had the idea of doing my own product. And the reason for looking to do my own product is one of the biggest shortfalls in biometrics from everything, and still today as well, is the claims that these companies were making on their product capabilities didn't actually stand up in what we class as real world deployment. So if you're going to go up to a card reader and use a card and it doesn't work, then there's something wrong with the reader or the card. And all that reader's got to do is read the same card with just a different ID on. But when it comes to a biometric product, there's two things that can happen. If it doesn't work, the user can then think there's something wrong with themselves, or it doesn't like me, which isn't the case. It doesn't choose who it decides to let in or doesn't let in. But the reliability of current technologies, even still into the market now, you're probably looking at a 5 to 10% of the population that aren't able to use it. And then you've got the added issue as well, where the design of these products for UK, Europe, US, you're looking at a lot of the biometric technologies, no matter which one they are, the first line of defense for any business is on the external. So then you're looking at environmental conditions as well. And then you've got to also understand that this product, I mean, we can actually store per reader now 50,000 unique users. So if you go up and you're one of 50,000 people and scan your fingerprint, it's got to find you as unique within those 50,000 pre-registered templates on the system and do everything else and open the door and flash the lights in just over a second. And that's what we're able to do now. I mean, it was 100 users 12 years ago. I mean, we could easily go up to 1 million users now, no problem at all. Not that there's much ask for that. That'd be a long queue at a door, right? If you got 1 million people trying to get in. But there are reasons for that when you look at larger systems. So I made the decision to make my own product. After all the experience I had with selling the products, after all the experience I had with installing them, learning the shortfalls of products, dealing with other manufacturers, I began to realize really quickly that I could actually build a product that and it was very much UK centric at the time. We weren't looking to go anywhere else at that particular time, but I could build a product that would meet the needs and demands of the customers. So that's how I got into that.
I can't even believe I'm going to ask this question, but I'm going to. What does it actually do? I get it. So the way I'm thinking now is, I was in the airport last week, a couple of weeks ago in India, and they had they were taking people's thumbprints. But the lady in front of me must have been there about 5 minutes. She was getting really nervous because it would not take. It was beeping all the time, going red and flashing red. And I was sitting there thinking, like, what is it actually doing? Is it just your fingerprint? Is it going deeper down? Is it the pressure? So
most fingerprint readers use what's called an optical scanner. And the best way to really, any of them, thermal capacitance or even optical scanners, the best way to describe it is the sonar on a submarine.
Okay.
So sonar will ping down to the seabed, and then it keeps receiving the signal back at different times, and then it's able to map out the seabed. Now, fingerprint reader, whether that be light, optical, or whatever version is using, is the same sort of principle. It's sending a beam of light up to the fingerprint, and then it's receiving it back on a photo cell at different times because you've got ridges. And when it's receiving these images back at different times, that's able to then map out an image of your fingerprint. And then what happens then is an algorithm will actually look at unique points. So you can have bifurcations, dots, ridge endings, or you get pattern-based algorithms as well. So they're looking for just the pattern itself. And they'll then process that with stored data that they've already got. So they're looking for these unique reference points. That's how most systems work. But the problems you have there is straight away people with skin conditions.
Okay.
Especially in external environments. Sunlight can affect the light itself on the scanning capabilities. You've also got, if it's wet, or creams or oils or dirt or dust or debris will fill the ridges. So then the actual scanner isn't able to identify the fingerprint. So in that instance there, I would assume that that person themselves is having one of those 5 to 10% problems. But were they scanning the passport first? So the biometric data was on the passport?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's classed as a 1-to-1 match.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
Realistically, that should be a lot easier. But if the scanning technology isn't up to it, then it doesn't matter how many times you scan. It's not going to match you with your stored data.
That's why I asked, because when I looked at the technology, I could have done better myself. It was
Okay, yeah.
So
I would just like to state as well, ours is way better than that. Before anybody sat here thinking, okay, so he's just completely and utterly slated everything there about.
We'll edit that bit out, it's fine.
No, our success is based on delivering where other manufacturers fail.
That's where I was leading to, because you said you wanted to create a product that you felt that did this and that, and you had your own specification functionality you wanted to build in.
Yeah.
That was my question to you. Do you see these falls in some of these other readers and said, actually, we want to make this world leading, we want to make it so good it has a very minimal failure rate?
Yeah.
Is that something that
absolutely? That's exactly what we did. When I did
dug out of that.
yeah.
You're welcome.
I came up with 21 design points that I wanted to achieve, which was quite a lot. So the first product, which was called the ievo reader. ievo stands for Intelligent Evolution, which I made up. I was always told that if you're going to come up with a company name, that you should use 3 or 4 letters, and it should be difficult for people to pronounce because then they'll remember it more.
All right.
So, yeah, and iPod at the time was, I this, I that. So I was like, okay, ievo. Checked it, nobody had it. So yeah, it's registered now, which is fantastic.
Sounds a bit better than that woman off Back to the Future 2 who McFly.
Yeah. I couldn't call it the McFly reader. It was might have offered a few challenges
I think so.
In understanding it. Where was I?
ievo sounds better.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So 21-point design list. So technology wise, I was able to deliver that. For example, our actual reader will scan 4 millimeters below the skin. So we can scan your dermis and epidermis. So what's classed as your real fingerprint. The only reason you have a fingerprint itself is underneath your skin. You have collagen ridges, capillaries, and other bits and bobs that push your skin up. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't actually have a fingerprint. So your true fingerprint is actually underneath your skin as well. And our ultimate reader can scan 4 millimeters below the skin. It actually takes 9 images all at once, using different polarizations of light and different wavelengths of light. And these different wavelengths of light as well are able to combat certain conditions. So our reader can actually scan your fingerprint submerged underwater. Not that you need it submerged underwater unless you're going to install one on a submarine, I guess. But, there's advantages there. Grease, oil, dirt, levels of dust, debris, it can do all of that. And there's many other features as well within the reader. The reader head itself has got a built-in thermostat controlled heating system and environmental controls. So for cold weather, especially like we've experienced here, most other manufacturers of readers will fail at 0 degrees. Ours will work down to minus 20 degrees. And we've had some change to work even below that in some parts of the world. It's IP rated 65, so dust, water, ingress is all taken care of. And there's lots of other security features built in to the reader head as well that, take us a step further than any of our competitors' products.
So was this user-led R&D? So did your customers say, would like a reader, but we need it to go down to 20 degrees below, we need it to do X, Y, and Z?
I didn't go out and do research with users because I'd built that research up over years. I knew what the shortfalls were going out and selling the technology or trying to promote the technology or, dealing with end users who had frustrations with the products that were out in the market and still do, today with other manufacturers' products, which is a shame really. If there's one country in particular, which we're doing extremely well in now, but when we went out there at the time, we actually had come across one tender where it was written in the tender that a 30% failure rate was acceptable because they had become so used to the technology 30% of the time not working. It was more like 40 probably. That just became the norm. And it was quite a challenge at the beginning to go out into that market and say to them, well, actually we can do this a bit better. In fact, not only can we do it better, we have what's classed as a 0% failure to acquire a fingerprint, because we can get your dermis and epidermis. So we'll always acquire a fingerprint. That being said, there needs to be enough data there then for the algorithm to also identify you.
So what is the use case for this then? Is it construction sites you've mentioned? Is these people trying to get on site and you've got to, if they've got the right level of authorization, you let them on, or?
Well, we just manufacture and
you don't
we don't deal with end user.
Right, okay.
That's one thing I did learn from the previous company that I worked for. And from the very start of the business, it was all about knowing that the adoption of biometrics was there, knowing that the end user interest was there, and more importantly, knowing that the security industry understood that this is where it's going. And then, we knew we had this installer base of X amount of thousands of installers in the UK, and they're going to come across requirements for biometrics. So there's two things we did at the very beginning. One of the key areas that I looked at was all of my competitors' products were trying to compete with what we class as an access control system. So they were looking to sell their product as a complete system. So that'd be software, card reader, mix, biometrics, and all singing, all dancing. So for me as a new business, I was like, well, how am I going to go out and compete with 20, 30-year-old well-established access control companies in the UK if I'm going to go out and sell a product, not the biometric side, because they haven't got that, but how am I going to go and compete with access control when it's something that I don't know 100% about? So I took the decision very early on to become what was classed as a third-party reader. I wanted to be the Intel inside of a laptop, whereas the biometric specialist, I wanted ievo to be the biometric specialist for access control companies in the UK. And I picked on one of the biggest access control companies in the UK, manufacturer based in Brighton. And we went down to visit them with our completed product. Excuse me. Went down and presented not only our product, we knew that they didn't have their own biometric, along with most access control manufacturers in the UK didn't have their own biometric, but we're all looking to add one of our competitors' products because they felt they had to have it there if it was going to be requested, but didn't really understand a great deal about it. What they did know is the shortfalls of these technologies, because when you're attaching somebody else's product to your own, then you've got to stand by it somewhat. And they were not promoting these products as such, but saying, yes, this can work with our system, and then getting the problems. And of course, then they're not going to go to the Far East manufacturer for the issues. They're then going to look at this manufacturing company in the UK. So it was causing them issues. So we went down and demonstrated the product capabilities firsthand, which completely and utterly blew them away. And then the creme de la creme, I guess, is we had already integrated our product without them knowing into their software, which they didn't have a clue about. So when we actually demonstrated our products and registered them, we registered the directors through their own software onto our system, and it was all seamless. In behind, there was, people sweating and whatever else. But yeah, and that I think was a good move forward for us at the time. So we're pretty much integrated now into every access control system manufacturer in the UK, and also increasingly worldwide as well with some of the even bigger companies, which is great. More importantly, we're the only biometric offering for most of these companies, which is brilliant. We're the only company to be seamlessly embedded into their software platform as their only choice. They don't necessarily promote. Some do, some don't. We have different business models for different access control manufacturers. But on top of that as well, we have an ever-growing list of what we call specialized integrators who will offer a system for a specific market. So like going back what you said to construction, we have companies who do construction software, and they understand that at the forefront of that technology that they offer, they need to ensure that the data they're providing, because it's all about data control or user control, health and safety, CSCS cards on construction, that the security device that they have at the front is going to ensure that that person is who they say they are. It's point number one. And then more importantly, that in that harsh environment, an external environment, construction environment, that it's going to work. And that's what we do as a business. So I think industry-wise that we actually track and monitor, we're probably talking about 20 industries now.
Across that discussion there, you mentioned we a few times. So can I just drill into the business? So how does that look like? How does it set up?
We
as in ievo.
Me and my team
okay.
have an absolutely fantastic team of people, which is growing year on year, as is the business is growing year on year. We have senior engineer, principal engineer. We have hardware engineer. We have our own in-house software. We do all our own assembly, part build, and manufacture. We don't do raw PCB board. We have marketing. We have export. We have a full UK sales team. So yeah, it's come on quite a lot actually.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of the challenges across that? So you've grew, you've added to the team, you've become a manufacturer, you're exporting now. I wrote something down, which you mentioned was lessons learned. So you have learned a few lessons along the way. Is there any other hurdles that you could tell us about that you've been on that journey?
Yeah, how long have you got?
I know. I didn't even ask that.
Well, yeah. I think anybody who runs a business could sit here for hours and tell you about hurdles. I think one of the biggest things I have learned is pretty much every 2 years, an unexpected, unbelievably high hurdle comes along and hits you where it hurts. And as frustrating as they are, you can't, you know something's coming, but you don't know what it is. That's the most frustrating bit. And normally it's something that's out of your control. But the lessons you learn from that and how bigger, and more prepared you become as a business, as a team, as a whole, as a business owner, I think they're invaluable, really, to come across. You've also then got the few curveballs as well with, Brexit, for example. I'm not going to turn this into a political debate, but you go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning watching the Brexit vote, thinking everything's staying in, and then you wake up at 7 a.m. and you realise you've just lost 20 grand a month due to dollar rate, and at that point you're like, okay, right. So that was a bit of a curveball I wasn't expecting, but supplier issues can also be a problem. We try and try and utilize the services of the Northeast as much as we can. I'm not just saying that. A lot of the companies we utilize, down to external design companies, PCB manufacturer, our tool makers, for all of our product castings and stuff, are all local. We like to keep everything as local as we can because it gives us greater control over that. So I think that's helped us avoid a few hurdles. I'm sure there are some, or there used to be some money-saving views with regards to relying on importation. But then you've also got the challenges of something disappearing and you not knowing about it. So over the years, there's been a couple of times where I've shut the doors at night and thought, that's not gone too well. And then you dust yourself down, pick yourself back up, and come back after the weekend and get it sorted.
Yeah. Thinking about growing that team, then it's a technical product. You've mentioned you have principal engineers and senior engineers, that kind of thing. Is there an opportunity to bring young people through? The first thing I wrote down was actually you said you had a limited CV back in the day, if you remember them ironmonger days.
Yeah.
Is this something the business can look at, maybe to bring apprentices in? Is that something?
Yeah, we've done apprentices. Okay. We've done postgrads. We've had people in mid-graduation as well. And biometrics isn't on a lot of people's CVs,
yeah.
especially in the UK. So when I hear people talking about skills shortages for the Northeast, I'm like, wow, talk about skills shortages for just the biometric industry as a whole. But that's stuff that we can teach people coming in, and believe me that some of the guys that have come in, and when I say guys, I mean male and female, some of the people that come into the business have brought some serious value to the business as well. Apprenticeships, everybody who comes into ievo is told the same thing from day one. We're a growing business, and I look to build a team that's going to grow with the business. So everybody has career path opportunities within ievo, and we've proven that. We've had people who've come in as a sales role who are now managing a team of people. We've had people who've progressed through the business. We've looked at apprentices. We don't just bring an apprentice in. We bring an apprentice in to add value to their knowledge base and train and put the time and effort into them, to look then for them to become an employee and a valued member of ievo, and then that's when we get back our investment. So yeah, we're very strong on that. We've also got some people within the business who are come from not competitors but different industries that add value to the business, who are experienced in what they do as well.
So what about you, Shaun? So you've mentioned the team there, growing the team, bringing the team on. What about you as a person? Do you have a mentor? I mean, who kicks you? Who do you go to? Because it's quite tough sometimes, and quite a lonely place for an entrepreneur and an MD. Do you have such a person that you can help you with?
I don't actually class myself as entrepreneur. I think the word entrepreneur is overused, personally. I think an entrepreneur is somebody who's looked at multiple businesses or been successful in one and then gone off to do something else. I have a non-exec, which I've had now for a good few years. I have a great relationship with that non-exec because it's the complete opposite of myself. So he's not a yes man. In fact, quite the opposite. And probably some of the most heated debates I've had at board level have been with the non-exec. But
Right.
I wouldn't change that for the world, because that challenges myself. Support of my wife is fantastic.
Is she watching on live?
Sorry?
Is she watching live? Is that why you had to
I
get
hope
you?
not. She's a teacher, so unless
All right,
a
no.
whole class is watching this, that's 20 quid. So no, you're right. It is lonely, and you're challenging, you question yourself, and you don't sleep. In fact, and this is no word of a lie, in fact, my whole management team are used to this now. I have a problem distinguishing between dream and reality with regards to some of the best business meetings I've had have been a dream. And then in the management meeting, I've started discussing what I believed we had all discussed. And then they're all looking at me as if to say, and they're like, I think you dreamt that one. I'm like, right. But then, can you cut that? No, but no, it's a great idea. So I don't, as a business owner, you never shut off.
Yeah.
But I've support from my wife is understanding that even when you're on holiday, I set aside an amount of time, not a great deal, but you can't just, work-life balance when you're running your own business. I don't think that really exists. I think you just got to cope along the way, and you got to do what you got to do. When you're involved in your business and you're running your own business, it's different if you're a business owner and you have an MD and whatever, and you turn up once a month. But that's not me. It is lonely. You're probably the first person who's asked us that, but yeah, no, you're right. It can be a lonely existence in some regards, but also very rewarding.
And in terms of your non-exec, so you got some good targets going forward for the what do you have, a 3-year plan, a year plan?
Well, we, depending on what we're looking to do as a business, people will say, what's your 5-year plan? Well, good luck if you can write one of them and stick to it. 3-year plan is more of your roadmap, I guess. But then we have our annual plan. So business objectives are set every year by myself, and then they're filtered down to management team KPIs, key performance indicators. So all this stuff as well that you learned from retail is all there.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I have an open door policy as well on my office, and then all of that information, business objectives, management KPIs is there for every single person within the business to see or view whenever they want, including forecast as well for the year. And then we also do a annual report. So everybody in the business comes in, and then we do a half-year one as well. So they get shared with all the information and get an understanding of where we're looking to take the business for the next year. So we keep focused on each year by year as the business objectives. But when it comes to longer-term plans, I've probably got a good 20 years up in my head.
One last one before we take the floor. What's next for your industry? So are we talking retina scans here? Or are we going, what does the future look like?
Well, fingerprint is still over 50% of the global market. Retina is, not retina. Retina's gone. Iris scanning, facial, gait, the way you walk. There's loads of different biometric technologies, but fingerprint's still the top and serving us well. We always keep an eye out. We always test other technologies. We're always looking for different ways. One of the beauties of ievo is we can do what we want, when we want, and pretty much how we want, even down to algorithm based. So there's a lot going on this year for us. There's a lot where we're increasing in our product portfolio and our product range to gain the same good growth that we're experiencing in certain markets, just down to product development. So it's about design of the product, which I learned from D&M back in the day. I've worked with them ever since, been absolutely fantastic. Yeah, good plug. That's 20 quid. Why I'm here today. And if it wasn't for them at the very beginning to believe in what we wanted to deliver, then I doubt we'd be where we are today, because I didn't have a clue about design. But what I've learned now about implementation of design itself into meeting your customers' needs and demands is what we're going to be about as a business for the next 12 months. So yeah, watch the website if you want and see what's coming out imminently.
Brilliant. It's been really insightful, Shaun. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
What I want to do is take it to the floor, see if we've got any questions. What I will remember to do is repeat your question. So keep it quite succinct, please. Or you can shout out. We still might get it picked up. So has anybody got any questions for Shaun? Yes, Carl.
Hi, Shaun. There's obviously real benefits to the technology, but do you think there's a reason why it hasn't really caught on in the domestic market?
Domestic market is actually one of my aspirations in probably my 20-year longer term. Price is number one. So although we can deliver technology-wise now, there's quite a few issues to consider. I mean, the original product, as I said, for the other company I worked for, was a biometric door lock for your home. I'll tell you a very quick story as well. I was a guest speaker at the Biometric Global Conference, and I was getting rather frustrated within the industry because they were talking about the biometric boom and, this big bubble and when it was going to happen, and the same story every single year. And I went out and told them the real problems with biometrics and why it wasn't growing as much as it should be. And the 3 American guys came over after my presentation and asked for an hour of my time and asked me exactly the same question that you've just asked, which was with regards to domestic adoption of biometric technologies for your home. So I started then telling them all of the issues with biometric technologies and the adoption of this in the domestic market, to which, as I'm continually, just letting everything out, their faces are dropping and dropping and dropping. And it turned out by the end of the hour, when I think 2 of them were pretty much crying, that they had just had multi-million-dollar investment into launching a biometric door lock for the American market that had gone out to, what's their big Home Depot or something like that. All of their stands had gone out to Home Depot, lavished with all of these door locks, and then they'd realised within the hour that had completely and utterly destroyed their product. Yeah. And yeah, I think they lasted about 6 months, unfortunately. So technology is there. Well, we've got technology that'll deliver. Plug. Price point is not there. And then you've got the complexity of the actual door itself. And that's where the problem lies. There are so many different point lock-in systems. There are so many different types of doors that as soon as you look putting a biometric onto it, then it needs to become electronic. And then your price goes through the roof as well. And how do you install it? The reader's easy to install, but then you've got to look at the locking mechanism itself on the door. Companies out there are now still selling stuff and trying, and they're really easy to get into. In fact, extremely easy. And one of the best adverts I ever saw for this fingerprint door lock, which they had done, is that they were demonstrating the fact that the fingerprint door lock was waterproof. But then I looked at the sensor and I'm like, well, it won't scan your finger if the door lock's wet. It won't work. And what they had done is they had sprayed the door lock, and just as the finger was coming up about a centimetre away, they'd obviously dried it, and then carried on with the image. So yeah, they were falsely demonstrating the product capabilities. But watch this space. Got some good ideas moving forward, but price point will be key.
Thanks, Carl. Yes, Natalie?
Do you find yourself looking at people's hands, and do people show you their hands and go, oh, would you be able to make this work? Because I've been sitting here looking at my fingers and I wonder if this one would work on Shaun's system.
Yeah. Well, I had.
So, Shaun, I'll just repeat that one. Do you find yourself looking at people's hands?
No, is the no. I don't go around looking at people's hands. It's bad enough that I dream some meetings, let alone have a hand fetish to add on top of that. But no, that within the industry itself, within the security industry, there was one instance which I'll never ever forget. I went down to demonstrate big security industry installer on a national level, Went down and met with the MD, demonstrating our product and, all of its claims. And then he turned around and said, okay, so that'll be able to scan through. And I was like, yeah. He said, okay. And then he picked up his phone and called this gentleman in. Well, I've never seen fingers like it in my life. And he said, okay, if you can get him to scan, because he can't scan on anything else at all, then, we'd do some business. And he was a guitar player who didn't use whatever it's called. So huge calluses on the fingers, and registered to him. It registered, which, inwardly I was absolutely sweating because I'd never seen anything like it. And then, and then he went, okay, so he's now on your system, so he'll work. And I said, yeah, he'll definitely work. So he put his finger on, bang, green, got let in straight away. Well, this guy just stormed off. The MD started laughing. He said he was actually sandpapering his fingers this morning because he's not been able to get to work on anything else. So, that's just a real, what a big, long, like somebody desperately trying to beat the product. But we've had loads of instances of that where we actually, we do a lot of business where our products are being put in to replace competitors' products that aren't doing what they say they're going to do, which is fantastic for us. It's a shame they didn't go with us in the first instance, but it just proves biometric adoption and acceptance as a whole is definitely the way forward.
Yeah. Yes, question.
What do you do to look for new product ideas and develop new strategies for that?
So what do you do to look for new product ideas? What's your strategy?
Well, some of the stuff that we've been working on over the last 18 months is all been based on, again, customer feedback. So end user feedback, integrator, installer, but then looking at all of the data as well. So the first reader that we ever built was called the ievo reader. In hindsight, we probably should have come up with a different name because that was the company name as well. But we pretty much switched that reader to what's now called the ultimate reader. And that's the one that delivers in, the harshest of environments, and our flagship product, really. We then have another reader called the micro. And it, in the markets that it does extremely well in, it does really well in, but it's almost over specified for some other markets. It's too much. It does too much. They don't require that. And then there are other installation. We look at everything as a whole when it comes to design of a product, not just the end user part, not just the ergonomics, not just the aesthetics, but also from an installer's point of view and an integrator's point of view. We've got to look at every single part of it. And then, there's a particular UK government accreditation, which unfortunately we're not allowed to promote, but we are certified by them, all very top secret. So there are other security features as well that we've got to look at within the design of the product.
Excellent. Got two questions. Okay, we'll go here first. Have you installed readers in any unlikely places?
Yeah, well, not personally, but yeah. I was actually preempting that question because that's knowing where this podcast is going on a global scale. Normally, when I'm telling certain, there are loads of places we've had our readers installed that we're not allowed to talk about, which is really, really frustrating because some of them are like, if it would be a PR's dream. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say anything.
Bite your tongue.
Yeah. I tell you, one of the best two or three times really that's actually blown my mind was I remember in a taxi in London with my UK account manager. I'm on the phone. We're trying to get back to King's Cross. All of a sudden, he's having an absolute head fit and whacking the window to the point I'm just like, what is wrong with? He's finally lost it. I mean, this is my UK sales manager, and he's lost the plot. And he's going like that, and he's pointing. And then, yeah, sure enough, there are readers, and they've been installed outside this building. And that was really weird to see your own product, something that you've designed, and there in situ. You don't normally get to see it being a manufacturer. And then when I was with one of my UK account managers, we were in Canary Wharf, and he said, right, just so you know, he said, you got readers on that building, that building, that building, that building, that building, and that completely and utterly blew my mind as well. And then the best one, I think, for myself was coming out of Durham train station with my son. He was sat in front of the car, and then there was a site opposite, and all of a sudden my son went, Dad, there's your readers. and that completely and utterly blew his mind as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't know they were there. Obviously, we don't know a lot of the time where our product ends up. But we've got some fantastic installations, some really, really high profile installations which are great. We've been shipping pallets of stuff overseas for larger installs as well, which is fantastic. But yeah, sometimes it's the smaller ones that, for my son, it was
How old is he?
14.
14.
It was a realization of, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a proud moment. So
He's going to do his apprenticeship?
no. No. Did his work experience, but no,
Right, okay.
no
Excellent.
apprenticeship, no.
What a question over here?
Sorry, this is from my lawyer head on. Where's the data stored?
So where's the data stored?
It's the first most important part with regards to our EVOs. We're not the same as AFIS, we're not the same as the police. We don't store your actual fingerprint. We don't contravene any data protection or human rights laws. And anything that is stored is held on the end user's secure system. We don't have access to it, so it falls under their own data protection rules.
Any other questions for Shaun? No, I'd just like to say, Shaun, that's been really insightful. Thanks for your open honesty. Really good. Thanks to the guys. So thanks to Lee, Gavin, Graham. Great stuff. And thanks to the DNN team as well. And thanks to Shaun Oakes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shaun.